North Korea is one of the most mysterious and misunderstood countries in the world. But here's what's even more strange. Depending on who's telling the story, North Korea sounds like a completely different place. Inside the country, North Korean media paints a picture of a strong, proud nation, led by a genius leader who protects his people from constant outside threats. But in the rest of the world, especially in places like the US, South Korea, and Europe, North Korea is seen as a dangerous dictatorship where people are starving, information is banned, and nuclear weapons are a constant threat. These aren't just different points of view. They're deliberate stories, carefully shaped to serve very specific purposes. So in this video, we're going to break it all down. What does each side actually say about North Korea? Why are the stories so different? And what do these narratives tell us about power, politics, and truth? But before we start, I'm on a road to get 1,000 subs as a small channel. If you want to help me, then like, subscribe, and enjoy watching this video. Thank you. Let's start with what each side is actually saying. If you were born in North Korea and grew up with state media, TV, newspapers, school books, you'd probably believe your country is strong, successful, and morally pure. You'd hear that the US and South Korea are constantly threatening war. And you'd be taught that your leader, Kim Jong-un, is brilliant, fearless, and deeply loved by the people. North Korean media shows Kim visiting construction sites, inspecting farms, leading missile tests, always calm, wise, and surrounded by smiling citizens. The country is shown as united and thriving, and when problems come up, like food shortages or sanctions, they're always blamed on outsiders trying to destroy the country's independence. Meanwhile, if you're reading international news, whether it's from CNN, the BBC, or South Korean outlets, you're hearing something completely different. The focus is on human rights abuses, political prisons, extreme poverty, and a total lack of freedom. Kim Jong-un is often portrayed as a ruthless dictator who inherited power from his father and grandfather, runs a brutal regime, and uses nuclear weapons to scare the world into paying attention. The same events are described in totally opposite ways. A missile launch? North Korean media says it's for self-defense, protecting against American aggression. Western media calls it a provocation, a dangerous step toward war. A military parade? In the North, it's patriotic pride. In the West, it's an intimidation tactic. Even basic facts, like how many people are going hungry or what the economy looks like, are completely different depending on who you ask. So we're not just looking at different opinions, we're looking at two completely different realities. So why does North Korea tell this kind of story? It all goes back to the Korean War. From 1950 to 1953, North Korea fought against South Korea and the United States. The war was brutal, and even though it ended in a ceasefire, it never really ended. There's no peace treaty, just an armistice. So North Korea has lived with this idea that it's constantly under threat. Over the decades, the North Korean government, starting with Kim Il-sung, then Kim Jong-il, and now Kim Jong-un, turned that fear into a core part of national identity. They built a story where North Korea is always under attack from the outside, and the only thing keeping the people safe is a strong, united government under a wise leader. That's where Juche comes in, a philosophy of total self-reliance. It basically says, we don't need help from anyone. We can survive on our own. It sounds empowering, but in practice it justifies total isolation. This narrative serves a few big purposes. It keeps the ruling family in power. If the leader is the only one who can protect the country, then criticizing him is like helping the enemy. It explains away hardship. If people are hungry or poor, it's not the government's fault, it's the fault of American sanctions or South Korean spies. It turns suffering into patriotism. People are told that enduring pain makes them heroes defending their homeland. And because the government controls all media, people rarely hear anything different. Foreign movies, websites, books, Even owning them is illegal. People caught listening to South Korean radio or watching a smuggled movie can be sent to prison. In other words, the story works because there's no competing version. If you grow up hearing that the outside world is evil and your leader is a genius, and there's no other source of information, you believe it. It's not just propaganda, it's a full reality system built for loyalty, fear, and control. Now let's flip things. Why does the outside world tell such a different story? First, there's the obvious reason: human rights. Reports from defectors, satellite images, and NGOs show that North Korea is home to some of the harshest living conditions in the world. Thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, of people are believed to be in labor camps. There's little medical care, widespread poverty, and a government that punishes people for speaking out, trying to escape, or even watching foreign movies. International media and governments highlight these stories for both moral and strategic reasons. Morally, the suffering is real, and many journalists, human rights activists, and even regular people want the world to know what's happening. It puts pressure on governments to act, and it keeps North Korea from being completely ignored. But there are also strategic interests behind the Western story. North Korea has nuclear weapons. It's tested missiles that could reach South Korea, Japan, and possibly even the US mainland. By framing the country as aggressive and unpredictable, Western governments can justify keeping troops in South Korea and Japan, building missile defense systems, imposing economic sanctions, refusing to negotiate without strict conditions. So, yes, a lot of the international narrative is grounded in facts. But those facts are also framed in a way that supports specific policies and goals. There's also a Cold War legacy at work. The US has long seen itself as the defender of democracy and freedom. So, when a country like North Korea, authoritarian, closed off, and communist, grabs attention, it fits neatly into that storyline. And let's be honest, portraying North Korea as dangerous, strange, and extreme also makes headlines. It gets clicks. It stirs emotion. That doesn't mean it's all false, but it does mean we should look at how the story is being told and why. So we've got two sides, each telling a very different story, and each doing it for their own reasons. North Korea tells its people that the outside world is evil, and the government is their only protection. The story builds loyalty and keeps people afraid to rebel. The outside world tells a story about dictatorship, danger, and human suffering. That story helps justify pressure campaigns, sanctions, and military presence, and appeals to people's sense of justice and security. But here's the problem. When both sides believe their story is the only truth, it's almost impossible to talk to each other. That's part of why negotiations with North Korea so often fail. Each side sees the other as dishonest, unreasonable, and dangerous. It also makes it hard for the rest of us to know what's really happening. Most North Koreans can't speak freely. Journalists can't move around the country without government minders. Much of what we know comes from limited sources, and some of it is years out of date. And when we reduce North Korea to just crazy dictator and brainwashed people, we ignore the complexity. We miss the real people living in that system who might quietly question things or try to survive however they can. In a way, this isn't just about North Korea, it's about how power uses stories to control, to justify, to survive. At the end of the day, North Korea is more than just a country. It's a case study in how powerful storytelling can be. The government tells one version to stay in control. The rest of the world tells another to justify its response. Both narratives are built on real pieces of information, but both leave things out. Both are shaped by fear, history, and politics. So the next time you hear something about North Korea, whether it's from inside or outside, ask yourself, who's telling this story? What do they want me to believe? And what might I not be seeing? Thanks for watching.